Yeah, sorry.
Now they can hear me?
Yes.
Great. Welcome all online. I'd like to start these sessions a way to kind of lower the threshold of talking and conversing in these spaces. So I'm just going to have everyone turn to 3 or 4 people around you. Introduce yourself if you're studying, where you're studying, if you're working, where you're working, and otherwise maybe something about why you particularly are interested in getting started in this field or why you're in this session. Online people, we're going to have some breakout rooms for you.
Yeah.
It's just going to be just 3 or 4 minutes. Don't take more than like 30, 45 seconds to talk. Make sure you hear from everyone in your little area. But yeah, feel free to start and then we'll get going after that.
So for the people online, you're going to be randomly assigned to a breakout room, and you will see when we close them.
Work fully forces, so it's military, pays military forces for crisis humanitarian. I'm a nurse by background. I'm in charge. I just came from there since I'm normal.
What's your name?
So yeah,
Yes.
Yeah. But I just like coordinating and stuff. What's your interest? Yeah, I don't know. It's so hard.
Okay, everyone. I hope you had a chance to meet, and if not, that's a great reason to, after this session, continue the conversations and meet. But I heard already some connections being made, so thanks. I hope the people online also had a chance to connect a little bit in the breakout rooms. See, the online list has also grown to participate. Again, for those who are online, we're doing this hybrid, so you should all have the rights to unmute and intervene. Please do, or use the chat or raise your hand. But feel free to participate online. We know it's might be a barrier, so we highly encourage the online participation as well. But yeah, if needed, I will intervene and then mute if there's any background noise. Having said that, welcome to the session. My name is Kenny Meesters. Work at Tilburg University in the field of information management. Been coming to HPW for a couple of years and happy to see that there's more and more next humanitarians, a new generation coming up, and happy to facilitate that journey into the humanitarian field. And I think this is also a bit of the story that we want to tell today. We had a session this morning already on views of the next humanitarian, that the next humanitarians have on the humanitarian system. But now, how do you become part of the humanitarian system? What are the challenges ahead? What are the opportunities, pitfalls, deceptions, happy moments, all the good things. So we'll have a few speakers that will share those insights from their perspective.
Exactly. Hi, my name is Gela. I've been working with Kenny about a year now. This will mark about a year on how do we leverage and empower the next generation of humanitarians. Right, as I currently consider myself part of the next generation. I just finished my master's in humanitarian logistics. I'm going to find myself in and out of a variety of communities, group chats, LinkedIn pages, all sorts of things, email chains, to talk about these kind of conversations. And one thing that comes up very often is, where do you start? What does it look like? What are the different ways that exists now? And what ways has it existed in the past? I mean, maybe you found a mentor, maybe you knew someone who's been in the field 20, 30 years. They might give you a piece of advice that's different from someone who's been in the industry for maybe 10 years, or someone who's been in the industry for 2 years. Right, and so the goal of this presentation series and also conversation, we want people to be able to give their input, is to provide some of that, to give kind of a space, to give insights. And so I have 3 wonderful speakers joining today. They will all be joining virtually from 3 different time zones, I believe, 3 different large island spaces. Why don't we have them speak up? You can give a little quick introduction to yourself. No need to go too in depth. We'll be going over your timeline after that, but we'll be doing it sort of fireside chat style with these three speakers. So if I could have Svetlana, Anna, and Andre introduce yourselves. Why don't we start with Svetlana? I saw your name up there first.
Hello, everyone. Do you hear me well?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Yeah, my name is Svetlana. I'm Bulgarian, and I currently work as Emergency Response Policy Officer for the European Commission, based in the headquarters in Brussels, in the Emergency Response Coordination Center. Thank you.
And Anna.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Enna. I am originally from Finland, and I'm currently based in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia, working with UN Women as a horrendously long title, Women, Peace and Security and Humanitarian Action Program Officer. And I've been here for about 1.5 years now.
And Andre.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, Andre Verity. I work and have for several years at UN OCHA, so the entity that's trying to organize this week, although I hear some comments about it being a bit of chaos downstairs there. But I have been in the information management and digital space for a long time, predating even my OCHA experience, but now I lead a team of technical folk and system engineers here in OCHA. Over to you guys.
A small comment though for the people in the room and people online, the call is being recorded. If you feel uncomfortable when you speak up, let me know. I can pause the recording. I don't want that to be a barrier, but I do want to document some of the presentation. So just so you're aware that it's being recorded.
Kenny, I would like to not record every other word I say. Good luck.
Sure. Thanks, Andre. Let's go for the engineering challenge. I'm sure in AI, we can write an AI bot to do that.
Thanks, Andre, making things easier for everyone. I love it. Well, if these three lovely humans are going to give us insights onto what it means to get started in the humanitarian field, it might be useful to know a little bit about how they got to where they are. So we're going to start off with just a little timeline overview from each of them. This is just a chance to sit back, listen to their stories as they happened, and I'll be sharing a slide about that at the moment. We'll be starting off right now with Enna to share a little bit about where you came from.
Sure. Shall I just go ahead?
Go ahead.
All right, Eshi, as they say in Amharic. So like you can see from this little presentation, my master's program is the Peace, Mediation and Conflict Research program from Tampere University in Finland. And a little spoiler, I actually still haven't graduated. My master thesis is pending some updates, and then I will be submitting it and graduating with my master's very, very shortly. But this is also hopefully to shed a little bit of comfort to those of you who are still studying, that it is entirely possible to not do the thing that you're supposed to be doing, which is graduate and then go to work. But while I was in my master's program, my thought was that I would very much like to have some work experience already to back up with my academic background, which is why I sought out to do some internships. And my first was the permanent mission of Finland to the United Nations. So that was in New York. And while there, I did monitoring and reporting on primarily the United Nations Security Council, but also some on humanitarian affairs. And my title was Junior Advisor on Peace and Security. That was a 3-month-long stint. And after that, with that experience and with some other experiences that I had prior to that, such as interning with the Finnish embassy in Cyprus and having lived in Belgrade, Serbia, I was able to secure another internship with IGAD, the Intergovernmental Authority for Development, and that is based in Djibouti. So that's in the Horn of Africa, a small, tiny country, very interesting. And IGAD is a development coordination organization. I was with the gender team, and as a junior gender officer, my work expanded the whole entire development organization and mainstreaming gender into all of its activities in the Horn of Africa region. That gave me massive, massive insight. And with that experience, I was able to then I was applying for opportunities and landed this one with UN Women in Ethiopia. That's on my path. I'm happy to share more as we go along, but I'll let other panelists come in next.
Thanks for sharing. And I do also want to mention that we did not meet in a humanitarian context. Anna and I met, we both liked salsa dance and met through a social group in Helsinki, and we found out they were both in this field. So you never know where you're going to find someone with a shared interest in,
Very true.
and speaking together at a conference and whatever. So that's a really cool way that you can see things manifesting in your life. But next, I'd like to invite Svetlana to give a little bit of insights from her time.
Yes, thank you so much. As opposed to Anna, my background and my path until here was not actually meant to be towards the humanitarian field. I studied political science in Sofia, in Bulgaria, and then I did a master's degree in European affairs in politics in Brussels. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to work for the EU, and I wanted to be to specialize in the field of human rights. Yeah. So this is what I was targeting initially, and I did an internship for the European Network Against Racism, which I enjoyed very much. And at that time, I had no idea whatsoever about humanitarian aid or civil protection where I work now. Then again, on my path towards the European institutions, that's what I really wanted to do. I joined Europe Direct, which is the information service of the EU, where I had to give, my job was to answer citizens' questions about the EU when it comes to rights, opportunities, funds, or whatever other question you might imagine about the EU. And that was very interesting for me, but it was not in the area of human rights. So I kept on applying for jobs, there was a position I really wanted, for which I applied. It was open for a long time, and I thought I had the right qualifications. So I applied for this position for 6 months in a row, every month. And every month they told me that they didn't want to give me the position. There was no opening for me. I was not fit for that one, and I kept applying because I thought that I met the criteria. And at a certain point, it was to a recruiting agency, and at a certain point they told me, "Well, stop applying. We have your CV. It's okay. We don't need to receive it again. If we have something, we'll come back to you." And I felt very discouraged and sad and upset. But 2 weeks after that, they called me. They sent me an email saying, "Well, we don't have the position that you applied for, but we have another one within the European Commission, and it's in the Emergency Response Coordination Center, where we'll be working with civil protection." And that was amazing because it was a way in towards the insight of the European institutions. But then the first thing I had to do is Google what civil protection is, because I didn't really thought about this field. I didn't know what exactly it meant, I found out, I discovered an amazing world in the Emergency Response Coordination Center. In the beginning, I did the shift system. So there is a 24/7 duty system where we monitor the emergencies around the world and organize the response on behalf of the European Union. I did that for 5 years, nights, weekends, Christmas, Easter, and I enjoyed very much. For the past 2 years, I've been working on humanitarian funding, where I'm still in the field of emergency response, but through another instrument, which is humanitarian aid funding by the European Commission. So for the past 7 years, I've been specializing in the field of emergency response and humanitarian aid. And I'm very happy that I discovered this world that I didn't know about before, or I haven't had the idea about it. But this is to say that it's good to keep your minds open to other opportunities that what you immediately see as fit for yourself, so that you can discover worlds like that. Thank you so much.
Great, thanks for that overview, Svetlana. Especially like the fact that you had to Google your job description. That's always a good thing to do on the first day or early on. Very cool. And our third panelist here, Andre, invite you on here to share a little bit about yours, and let me know when I should change slides. You have quite a breadth of experience here.
Yeah, and I wasn't sure how much of that you were going to keep, or whether it was going to condense down to one slide. So I'll try to go through it relatively quickly and in line with the timeline I had there. But yeah, I think similar to what Svetlana said there, I also did not start out with any kind of intention to get into the humanitarian sector at all. Actually, I went through and did it was called a Bachelor's of Commerce, but essentially a business degree with computer science in the 90s, with the intention, and I had worked the first 2 or 3 years of my professional career in like IT consulting. So it was very much about programming, working on intranets, archives, all these kinds of fun things in the mid to late 90s, very much geared towards the private industry. And I mentioned here that I did a master's in information management. I think what was interesting to note is that this was another one where I did not do my master's before I got a job. I actually did my master's in sort of the mid 2000s. And I was already into the emergency response business, and even had a child at that point. So I think that's one thing to remember, that we can always be working on our education throughout our careers, and doesn't have to be sort of that you finish your degree and then go directly into humanitarian space. But I ended up, I think I would say, and probably many of you who are listening and hoping to get into the sector probably hate people like myself, in the sense that I would say I stumbled into the development humanitarian space. And it was actually, I would say, one of the lessons I speak to. I have interns every year, and I often tell them that you have to be willing to take a certain type of risk to get into this field. And in my case, I went to the Philippines, and actually went door knocking when I was there. I was there for another reason, and was intending to stay, and ended up landing a UN volunteer position as they called it an ICT officer, but it was really, I was building, again, programming different systems. And I think the point there that I often reflect on is, at that time, and I think this is different now, but at that time I had the certain, what would be old school technical skills that the UN wasn't really up to date on. And there was a couple switched on individuals inside the UNDP Philippines that said, hey, come in and build us a lot of, or automate and several of our internal systems and websites. And these are the kind of things now that you just pay for something off the shelf. But the point now that I often think about that is, when I'm advising interns or youth coming into this field, is what are the skills that you can bring into this sector that will differentiate you, that the sector is weak on or short on. So for me, that was my time going into the Philippines. Was actually, I brought a technology and skills that just weren't there. I left UN. I had no necessarily intentions to stay. I ended up in New Zealand working on vaccination systems, actually, and getting kids what they called year 7 in their school vaccinated. And I was doing all the systems in behind that. And when I was there, flip to the next slide, please. What I ended up was, I got contacted by the UN volunteer system saying, hey, we got this role in North Korea. Nobody wants to go. Are you willing to go? And I was like, yes, for sure. And my wife still says she's never seen me quite that excited, as quite fascinated with the country. But again, I went as a UN volunteer, so better maybe than an internship in the UN world in that it was paid, but definitely entry level position, doing things like setting up internet for several UN agencies, because that was quite novel, obviously, in North Korea at the time. And then what ended up happening to get me into UNOCHA, and I think this is, again, I think it was Svetlana was mentioning sort of the way things work, is I wasn't, again, looking to get into the humanitarian sector. I was interviewing for a few jobs, and I ended up getting an email saying, hey, we overheard you on an interview as a staff rep or something. We're interested. We need someone to come work on an archival management system scoping consultancy for OCHA in New York. And I was like, hey, check, yeah, I've never been to New York. I'd love to go live there for a few months. And I ended up getting there. And I think one of the things I tell people there, again, is I got in by doing a 3-month consultancy, which turned into a 1 month and a 3-month. And at one point I got as short as 1-week contracts. And, there was it's an uneasy sensation of always moving, between these kind of short contracts. But over time, that obviously, I think, as you're hearing from the others, that gives you that experience so that you can then interview and or be more experienced for when it comes time for applying for other sort of long-term or more sort of stable kind of staff position. And then in OCHA, I've been in multiple different roles, and like where Kenny and I think I originally met Kenny, I think it was it in Haiti, maybe 2010. So I got into a lot of field emergency response and a lot of field support. So I became very much a focal point at headquarters for a while, supporting all of the OCHA field offices and disaster response around the world. And at this point now, I manage a team who takes care of all the technical aspects of things like Relief Web and the infrastructure for humanitarian data exchange. So all kinds of different systems and tools that either the community uses or even OCHA has in terms of some of its internal tools and so forth. So stuff that keeps me busy. And there's definitely been times in this career where it has been weekends, Christmas, Easters, where you're working. But I think as much as the sector can be chaotic, what I've often tried to encourage people to do is look at how to make that work predictable. And my made up word of how do you templify work, and it's definitely helped when finding a sustained way to work in this sector. But back to the panel, I guess, and I think maybe we jump to the next section.
Yeah, thank you all for the introductions. Now you know as much as I know about their backgrounds. And so at this point, I have some questions and comments that I'll be having each of the speakers speak to. But this is also a space that I want to make sure that all of you feel welcome to ask questions as well. I have questions, but if you guys had questions right away, I wouldn't need to ask any of mine because it's you all are the reason that this session is actually happening. Does anyone have any questions right off the bat? Things that they noticed or common theme? Also online as well. Feel free to type it in the chat or raise your hand if you'd like to speak. Not yet? Oh, yes, in the corner.
I wanted to ask, this sounds all like very high profile jobs. And is there a gap between a form of that we of course don't want white saviorism, so people with no skills coming to places and just putting their ideas onto something else or onto a minority group, but is there a possibility to not have skills but still enter the field? Because that's where at least I'm standing right now, and I'm trying to overcome that step. But all these jobs seem like very crazy master programs, very crazy bachelors, and very crazy application modules that needed maybe luck or just a very good CV already to enter the field. So I'm asking, is there a form of humanitarian aid that also be accomplished without that?
Great question. I'm going to ask Edna to speak on this one first because I think she's the most recently knowledgeable. I saw you laugh a little bit to yourself when you mentioned this is a super technical, high-profile job. How do you feel about that comment? And do you feel special because you have an intimidating job title and position and roles?
Yeah, very special. It's a very good question, and if it is of any consolation, I do reflect basically daily on the white saviorism and reflecting on if there's a possibility to enter the field without having like a crazy CV. I'm 29 years old and my crazy CV has been built over 10 years, and it's not honestly, I don't want to say it's crazy. It's just the CV. And the way that I started is with internships, and the way that I started my internships was I had experience working at a pharmacy and volunteer experience from years of just being a really passionate little gremlin on peace education. And so like volunteering is one way that you can sort of build a portfolio if you want to be more desirable, because the reality of it is that, like Andre was saying, you do have to have something tangible and something that makes you an eligible candidate for the jobs. But for internships, I started my first internship. I literally told them when they asked me in my interview, like, so do you know how to write a report? And I was like, well, no, but I think I could do it. And they were like, yeah, that's fair enough. And so I think you have to be a little bit resilient to the fact that most likely the first opportunity that you're applying for might not be an instant click and an instant yes, though for some people maybe that's the way, and maybe for some people it's a stumbling into the career. But then for some of us, it looks like you kind of have to grind a little bit and find your click the first time, and then taking it from there is, oh, it's not like we know what we're doing here. To be honest. And I think at least Svetlana and I reflected on that before. I think that quote that you're seeing on the screen is from her. But yeah, Svetlana, please accompany me in telling us that the crazy CV is not a prerequisite.
No, I don't think that a crazy CV is a prerequisite. However, what I wanted to say is that I heard the question that you don't have skills. Well, you do have skills. Yeah, every person has skills. So you just need to frame it in your mind also in a certain way. And also, experience is not something that has to be UN branded or European Commission branded. Yeah. For example, when I started in the European Commission in the Emergency Response Coordination Center, I had done volunteering for the Red Cross in Brussels. Yeah. It's not volunteering after a cyclone somewhere in Madagascar or Mozambique. It's just the local Red Cross in my neighborhood in Brussels, yeah. But you still can say something. You still have the commitment to show that you are committed to something, that you volunteer. You understand what volunteering is. You understand what humanitarian principles are. You're there for the people. You're concerned about the field, yeah. And also skills. When I interviewed for this position in the Emergency Response Coordination Center, they asked me how would I adapt to having night shifts, and I had no idea how I would adapt, because I never worked night shifts before. And on the spot, what I could think of is I said that I love napping, and I don't mind napping during the day. Yeah, it's not a glorious skill, but it proved quite useful on a personal level to be able to adapt to the job. So and the third thing I wanted to mention, especially for, well, I'm sure it's similar for other organizations, but the European Commission is a very bureaucratic place, a place where you need to be very, very, very persistent with application procedures, which literally take 2 days to fill in the application form. Yeah, this is the way it is, and it's made. I would personally say it's almost made on purpose to be able to, to select the ones who are persistent enough. But yeah, I thought to myself, well, I have time, yeah? I might not have the glorious CV that someone who graduated from a more prestigious university, who had opportunities to go volunteer abroad. No, but I have time, and I am persistent enough to fill in this application form every single time there is a new job opening. So at a certain point, it just helps. It's sometimes it's simple skills like that. I'm not saying that the other, like education or professional experience, are not useful. They're certainly very useful, but also simple things that you don't realize are a skill actually help a lot. Thanks.
Andre, do you have anything to add to this particular question?
Yeah, and I think I can answer a little bit of part of my answer to the questions online. I think the couple of things I was hearing also in the answers for me is, we shouldn't think, when you think of getting a job in the humanitarian sector, don't close the box to be just the international humanitarian community. I mean, yes, we've got UN Women, the EU here, and myself in the UN Secretariat. But to me, when I have the interns that work with me, I often tell them, don't think about the humanitarian sector, think about where you can help solve a problem in the world, or even at it could be a very, very local level. And what I say to them, I mean, this could be working with the homeless in downtown Chicago or downtown Vancouver. This doesn't have to be in Central African Republic, right? You could be working towards, I think we meant, Svetlana, maybe you mentioned the Red Cross, I think somewhere, right? Like a local chapter, volunteer to gain that kind of experience. I think as much as Kenny jokes that he's not in the humanitarian sector, I think of him very much as he is, because he is delivering as a professor lectures and knowledge to students, whether they themselves enter the sector or go elsewhere. I think there's possibilities where you can then draw on those experiences. And, I talk to people about, you could be a technical person who then goes and works to help improve the 112, 911 systems in countries so that response is better and faster and it saves more lives. So, you could be working for a pharmaceutical company. I don't care if you're working on solving malaria or developing a vaccine for malaria. You're doing amazing things. So I think we have to stop thinking about it just being like the UN and NGOs and then those kinds of entities. And where that brings me is, there's a couple of these questions that are on here about whether you need your master's and how do you fund yourself. I mean, myself, there's no way I could have went and did an unpaid internship. I mean, I came out of university completely broke and had to work for a couple of years to earn some money to allow myself to move. But when I look for interns, and now I can't speak to the rest of the Student Secretariat, I mean, but when I'm looking for interns, I have to say some of my most amazing experiences with interns, which by that I mean often most challenging because they press me the hardest, is people who are coming in with different experiences. They're not already inside of the sort of international development humanitarian box. I'm not saying there aren't amazing ones of those, they definitely are. But some of the ones I had that, I had one come in and he had been studying a bachelor's and master's in philosophy. And I was like, I like this person. This has got a different perspective on things. And boy, did he push me in some of my thinking and what we could be doing in the papers we produced. So I think I don't think we should be selling ourselves short. Obviously, that depends on who's doing the selecting and the bureaucracy of applying and what you're qualified for. We heard Svetlana's story there, but persistence is key. And yes, there's the comment or question about needing a master's when that experience is required. That's the bureaucracy. Certain different organizations have different things. Doesn't mean you need to work for the UN to be in the humanitarian sector, right? There's small to large NGOs. That you could be doing a lot of things with it that aren't going to require that. It's definitely going to facilitate it. I mean, you saw I took mine, after 10, 15 years, I took mine because it definitely made it easier for me when applying for other positions. And the question of experience when it's counted, that again is based on organization and HR interpretations of things. So there's no easy answer. And I don't think we want to get into those kind of details unless there's more time towards the end.
I think it's also a lot about what at least I've noticed, because I come from a similar background as Andre, it's about added value, right? Which could be in my case, it's technical expertise initially. But it could be personality, it could be competence, it could be experience, right? If you've been into a lot of countries, that exposure might help. But what I've noticed when I talk to humanitarians before, 10 years ago, what helped was saying, oh, but I know how to fix your spreadsheet, even though technically that's not what computer science is, but that's the way in. And then from that to grow. So saying, oh, I want to make the world a better place. Yeah, everybody, you might not think from the sessions. I think most people in this building want to, but what do you add? What could you add technically? What will be people better off that you can bring that, like Andre said, they don't have yet? And that doesn't necessarily need to be degrees or experience or skills.
And it's pretty interesting listening to all three of you speak about your backgrounds, because we connected, the three of us, through myself and through Kenny and some just people who are willing to talk about this, without realizing that all the speakers got into this field, into the humanitarian realm, without intending to, right? And it wasn't the requirement for the speakers. This is very much just how it happened. So it makes you think a little bit about, if you are actually intent on being in this field and you really want it, is that very different? And what can you add? Kenny was saying. And I think what Andre was also adding here, I think, was, do you need to be in the humanitarian sector to be a humanitarian? But I think that's a bigger question that we asked us a little bit in a previous session that the Next Humanitarians had. How can you make an impact? Right? Where do you make an impact? How does that look like? I'm aware of the questions that we have online at the moment.
I think Andre answered some.
And Andre started to answer those, and I think we'll touch on those as we go as well. But I'm actually looking for insights from our panelists on what is it that allowed you to make that, like, was there a specific something that you could highlight that helped you in that pivot, that helped you get into that humanitarian space, to get a seat at the table and to really be able to show up and make that impact? And I think we had a quote we were talking about earlier, and I'll pull it up here, from that Edna and I talked about, that impact is made by the people who show up. And so what is it, we can start with Edna, what is it that actually allowed you to be able to show up and have an impact?
What enabled me to show up and have an impact is realizing that it might as well be me. Because reflecting back on the question on white saviorism and not having a glorious experience, I'm literally just nice to work with, and I am willing to do the thing. And the willingness, as Keto was reflecting upon your intent on getting into the humanitarian field, is one of the things that makes you qualified for it, because willing to do the thing and being willing to is a crucial enabler that's going to make it worthwhile. Like Andre and Svetlana were both saying, that there are certain discomforts, and the humanitarian field can be very chaotic on one end and then incredibly bureaucratic at the same time on the other end. And so unfortunately for me, like the sort of what physically made me able to join the field is that when I joined the team in UN Women here in Ethiopia, the team is Women, Peace and Security and Humanitarian Action. It's a joint team. And originally I was supposed to just do the peace and security stuff, and I was supposed to just be gender and peace and security person. But because the team was short-handed on, like, they could use some support on the humanitarian end, the team leader at the time asked me if I'd be willing to support. And I said, I'd absolutely love to. I'd love to learn more about this field. And that was 1.5 years ago. And I've since negotiated my title to include humanitarian action, because now I work on both. And while that is kind of the sort of annoying, because that's just kind of me stumbling into things, rather than me getting a specific qualification or having some specific experience speaking a language, whatever, it just kind of happened for me. The prerequisite for it just happening to me is that I'm nice enough to work with and I'm willing to do the thing. I've lived in a bunch of places and I've gathered a lot of experience and a lot of exposure, and you can't underestimate both of those as a opportunity. And to finally say something on white saviorism, it's that because the impact is made by the people who show up, am I the best person to do this job? Like, if you pool all like 7 billion people on the earth, probably not, but I'm the one who's here, who's showing up, who's doing the work. And since someone needs to do it, it might as well be me. And I am very, very conscious of my privileges. And I'm also very conscious of the differences that I have to Ethiopian colleagues and the beneficiaries, other stakeholders. But I genuinely, honestly think that I'm also adding something of value by being me and by being a foreigner. And I know this is a tricky thing to navigate overall. And this is my personal opinion rather than like a grand statement of strategy of the UN Women or humanitarian architecture, but that's to say, really, impact is made by people who show up. Svetlana, please go ahead.
Svetlana, you have a raised hand.
Can I go?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thanks a lot. Yes, just to say, yeah, and I really support and share what you're saying. We happen to be at the same place, so we do the job. And here on my side, I also wanted to mention something that we discussed previously about the core training. when I joined the Emergency Response Coordination Center of the European Commission, what I knew about was the European Union. Yeah, it's a very vague thing. But it actually, what I could say and I could be confident enough with is that, okay, I understand how European institutions work. I have a knowledge about the institutions, about the politics, about bureaucracy that not everybody has, and most importantly, not everybody has the tolerance level high enough to accept the bureaucracy. Yeah, I do. I don't mind. I deal with it. So what I could bring in the beginning was, okay, I understand the institutions, fine, and then I will learn the field. And this is what I did when I first started, because for me it was a world I had never imagined I could have access to. I was so impressed, so humbled, so wowed by all my colleagues that were firefighters, they were rescuers, they went to all these missions abroad. I was so impressed that what I thought is that actually, okay, I'm here and I have this unique opportunity to just listen to them and learn what they can teach me about. And I remember spending my nights, because I had none of their training, for example, in firefighting. Yeah, and I'm obviously I didn't become a firefighter, but what I could do on my own is on night shifts read through all the fact sheets and all the background material, so that I understand, for example, what means to deploy somewhere a high capacity pumping module. Yeah, something that, okay, what is this thing? What does it do? So I start looking pictures and checking capacities and how many liters and what kind of terrains they can set it up on. So, okay, so this is something that I'm not a specialist, but I can work with. Yeah, I can develop this something. So basically, what my strategy was learn from everybody around who has something to offer and to show. I had, for example, a colleague who was former military, and then I'll listen to his stories. I'll listen to the way the military is organized, and I'll take notes about the ranks, for example, because I had no clue about ranks. And this is something that it's just background knowledge, but when you have to go somewhere in the field and deal with people who have ranks, at least you have an idea what it means. So yeah, as you see on the screen, adaptation. Adaptation is something that I would say is crucial and central to what we do, because you won't be ready for the situation. There were situations I could have never imagined. Like my last deployment was in Burundi, for example. Okay, I had to Google where exactly Burundi is and what it is all about. This increase of the Lake Tanganyika water levels. Okay, fine, but what I can rely on? Okay, I'm French speaking. Fine, so I can rely on language. I understand more or less how civil protection works, so it must be something similar around that context. Okay, I'm deployed with German engineers who know about water management. Then, remember this high capacity pumping unit that I read about a few years ago? Okay, maybe that's an idea I can link up with them about. So it's connecting the dots, yeah, connecting the dots. And this is not something that requires a diploma. This is something that requires curiosity, reading, taking the opportunity to learn from everyone you meet. Thank you.
Well, thanks for that as well, Svetlana. It sounds like your competency that really let you make it was knowing how to learn, right? Adapting, was knowing how to find resources, which I think anyone who's been a student has figured out how to do that when you're trying to write a paper at 10 p.m. for a midnight deadline, right? You learn how to find resources, right? And Anna, for your competency, like you said, you're just a nice person to get along with, and you're just in the room, you're there, and so you're able to do it, right? And you got there through a variety of means, but once you were there, you took advantage of that. And now, Andre, you have this IT competency, right? But there's a lot of people with IT competency, and most of them aren't working in the humanitarian field, right? What do you think it was that allowed you to make that pivot yourself?
Yeah, well, I'll start, Kito, by having to trust you. I mean, I think Anna is going to be obviously quite biased when she says she's easy to work with, right? We have to trust that what she's telling us is the truth. I'm just kidding, just kidding. I'm sure you are. I'm just 100% joking. For me, I mean, it comes back. I mean, relating a little bit to it, Anna's quote there, and what she said is, for me, what allowed me to get in there is I was willing to go. I was willing to go to places other were not. I'm not saying you should up and volunteer now to go to the middle of a war zone, right? I'm not saying that maybe have to be that bad, but there's a lot of places, even in many of the countries we live in, that are difficult or challenging, or people in situations that need help, and not a lot of people are volunteering. Yeah, and there's some of these pictures here that I've got up here. These are sort of like some of the information centers, and the top right is like was our office in Leogan, Haiti. I mean, and then we slept on the ground outside of that. And your workspaces were the tent in the middle on the left there. It was 40 degrees Celsius during the day when you're responding. And at the same time, you have people like in the picture in the middle is you have like the Undersecretary General and the head of UNDEC showing up asking for briefings on the spot. So you had to be, very willing to go through some hardship to, in my space. That's where I was taking my technical knowledge and that skills to the field in these locations where most other people were not going to go, right? They might be willing to donate money or these kind of things, but they're not necessarily willing to jump on a plane and as I did in this case in Haiti, Dominican Republic, stand on a strange airfield in Dominican Republic and fly in unauthorized because the pilot didn't tell us, but flew in when Hillary Clinton had landed. And we got told after we arrived that he just did it and we could have got shot down. So not saying we should all take those risks, but these are the kind of things you may live through. And I know this is being recorded, so how do I say this? You can't always maybe trust your organization to be doing exactly the right thing at certain moments in time when it's disaster response. So I think that one thing, be willing to take some risks. I'm not encouraging you to take deathly risks, but take some risks. I think one of the other ones for me personally, is really been big about being very open and being transparent about my work. Like I sort of described this idea of being very radically open. So really sharing ideas, and I think that helps in a selfish ways, help people recognize your knowledge and skills, but it also helps just get your ideas out there and other people to build and leverage on that. And I think that is sort of helpful. Two other ones I think of, one is, being able to, like I talked earlier about being able to identify problems or opportunities. So again, coming back to my technical skills, I still remember when what we refer to now as the digital humanitarian, and that concept really started popping up in the late 2000s, especially in Haiti, 2010. And I received this map, and it was a Ushahidi map, and it had the red dots all over it. And I sent myself an email saying, "Hey, you need to look at this measle map after the response because it's a data goldmine." And from there, recognizing that, hey, there's a whole world of people who are willing to support remotely, digitally, and how do we foster that to enable them, connect them with let's call them the traditional humanitarian sector, and is what let's say birthed the digital humanitarian network that really helped build the bridge between the two sides, and ended up with several other sort of side groups. And like this one, the upper right picture is we started running some workshops also about trying to figure out how do we codify decision makers and what the information is that they need. And just to note there, Kenny, I did have a picture of you there, but it showed you with a lot more hair. So that was clearly before you were getting into the humanitarian sector.
That was when I still classified as next humanitarian and not curious.
Yes, you weren't pulling your hair out yet. But I think the last one that I'll stress here, and this very much goes, Louisa, to your question on the chat, is what I'll call support. And there's two sides to that. There's the positive and the negative. The negative is that the humanitarian sector, and probably public sector, very much will abuse your passion for doing good things and working. They'll very happily let you work 60 to 80 hours a week, and they'll let you burn out. There are very few organizations, I know they're trying to improve, but there's very few who, in my opinion, do a very good job of supporting your mental and physical health. right? They have very traditional insurance, but they'll happily just let you work and work and work because they know that if you burn out and leave, they can just bring somebody else in. So I have to be kind of negative, but I want to put the reality there that is true. Now, the other side of support is that you will need some kind of positive support in your life. And by that, I refer to your family, your friends, and maybe it's a nuclear family or larger, but you're going to be living, if you get into the international station, you're living an international life that makes it very hard to be connected with family over time, or friends, and that those kind of things change. And in my, it was, I guess, 9 years where I was on sort of emergency deployment. So within 6 hours, I had to, if I got a notification, I had to be at the airport within 6 hours. So I constantly just had a go bag sitting. But that meant that during those years, my wife had to gear up her life to be a single mother. And it's not that I wasn't there, but if all of a sudden I was gone in 6 hours, she had to live like she was a single mother for 2 weeks to 3 months, undefined period of time. So you really got to have support in your life to take on certain aspects of the humanitarian sector. And that might be your family, that might be maybe your employer if you're doing emergency response, like Kenny, I'm sure, could talk about going on UNDEC or EU missions, while being a professor, or holding other jobs. I look at like Map Action, and they have volunteers who have regular day jobs with private companies or government entities, and they get released on their vacation time and do it. So you have to find support, I think, to work at least for the international humanitarian sector for a long period of time.
I would just say that from my experience, I noticed that this flexibility that you need in your personal life gets less over the years, right? So this is why I think why I'm so interested in Next Humanitarian. I don't know all your personal situations, but ever since I have a kid and I have a mortgage, my ability to deploy in 3 hours has gone down significantly, right? So you might be at a stage in your life that you have this flexibility to go to places, or to jump into an opportunity that as you get older will become less. So that's, I think, one of the reasons I think the Next Humanitarians are so important, because you have this flexibility that as you get older gets less. Mentally, I mean physically, but also mentally.
Yeah. Svetlana, you wanted to add to this concept of like barriers and things that really were more difficult for sacrifices made in life. Did you have an added comment there?
Yes, I wanted to echo and support what was already said, and just mention that yes, sacrifice there is, and the first sacrifice is comfort. Yeah, if you if you enjoy a comfortable life, predictable one, where you know what you'll be doing next weekend or next month, and this is important for you, maybe this field with deployments here and there is not for you. Maybe an office job is more suited for you. I'm not saying that the sector is not for you, but maybe the type of position is not. What I mean by that is, for example, when I had to work, I worked for 5 years on shifts, and working nights is not only working nights, which is not ideal for health, for your health. Yeah, I was younger then, so I didn't have major problems with that, but for example, it impacts your health, your sleep, your eating habits, and so on. So can't do it eternally, but also it impacts your social life. Working nights means that just if you work from Friday to Sunday nights, you going out with friends is off off the table, and you have to be. And here I'm coming to something that is useful, is to be self-aware, to know what you need to keep on going and be able to express it. I've learned that over the years. And what I mean by that is being able to communicate to your friends that you're not just blowing them off, you're just on duty. And the first thing that you do after that is that you contact them, you make up for the birthday party that you missed, or anything else, being able to plan. And an example of that is for when my last mission in Burundi, I was gone for 10 days, but I had enough experience to know that this is a very, very high intensity context where I will be working with people I would meet on the spot, and I'll have to stay with them for 10 days. And it's a lot of work, new context, everything is new. So I was self-aware enough to know that what I will need during these days is a friend who texts me every now and then in the evening, just asking how your day was, or just sharing, oh, today I went to the cinema, there is this new film, something normal, yeah? Well, bringing you the sense of normalcy, and then the world is still there, it continues, your life will be there when you come back home. And there's no, it's not only this high adrenaline world that you're currently, it's like a bubble, yeah? And so I was self-aware enough to tell a few of my friends, I would really appreciate if we can text a bit more these days so that I feel this sense of normalcy. And this is something that that really helps. But also you have to be able to create the kind of network around yourself that accepts that. Yeah. So it's yeah. Thanks a lot. This is what I wanted to share.
Thanks, Svetlana. That's really valuable, and that is really a sacrifice that I think you don't always think about at first when you're excited to get deployed. Like, I really want to go in the field. I really want to. Yeah, then you can't go to the housewarming and the birthday. Maybe if you're missing a holiday or something like that. Those are definitely sacrifices. And then we have this mental health question mark. And I know this is something we've talked about quite a bit because I went to go visit you in Addis in your current position. And we talked a lot about this work-life balance and how to manage it when you're the one in the room, you're the one who has to make it happen, but everything that needs to happen isn't going to fit in 40, 50, maybe even 60 hours in a work week, right? What are the barriers that you've had to face and how have you overcome them? Because you're now just a few years into this, right? You're still pretty new to it, but you're thriving. You're doing great, right?
I hope so. Yeah, Kieto visited me here in Addis when I had a very, very intense work stint, and there were a couple of different structures that were not really working at the same time. And so, yeah, there's definitely the sacrificing of the comfort. And what I would maybe add to that, or kind of my reflection on sacrificing of comfort, is sacrificing of familiarity. And there's like levels to the sacrificing of comfort. So you can have like, I know colleagues who have like a go bag at all times in Goma, DRC, because there could either be an active volcano eruption or they could be one of the several armed terrorist or like violent extremist groups that could attack the like there's like that level of discomfort, and there's the level of discomfort of like living in a container in Mogadishu or Juba or what have you. Or then there's the level of discomfort of Addis, which is just honestly more on the level of sacrificing of familiarity, because in like comparison to like these I don't live in a tent, I live in an apartment. Granted, that apartment has electricity breaks multiple times a day most of the time, and there's really nothing I can do about that. There's sacrifices in familiarity, and just the fact that like none of the foods that I would really want to make on my day-to-day life are I can't make them here in Addis because they're not like I can't find the ingredients. And so the cushy life in Addis in comparison to living in a tent is one thing, but you're still sacrificing a lot of the familiarity. When I have a problem here in Addis, there's usually a language barrier, and there's usually just the fact that I have absolutely no idea how to start solving my minor problem that then becomes a lot more meta work. And like being based somewhere that isn't your familiar, your comfortable surroundings, where maybe you grew up or you have used to living in and you know how things work, and you speak the language. Ethiopia obviously has over 80 different languages that are spoken. So my very limited knowledge of Amharic doesn't even take me very far outside of Addis. But I think you also become a little lame at parties because you are the person. Like I was just on annual leave and I was taking the subway and my friend was saying, "Oh, it's really annoying because it's so loud in here." And I was like, "There's a subway. Are you kidding me? It's amazing." So there's levels to this game and levels to the discomfort. And I think what Svetlana was saying about unpredictability is also something that is true in some like aspects of the field, but then it's also about the kind of person that you are. I'm very, very plans oriented. And so I will make some of my plans happen, and there's ways to do that, and especially the bigger organizations. On the flip side, there's the bureaucracy of it. But I think what I can say in terms of mental health and thriving, or at least surviving, and hopefully making an impact, a positive one, while doing that, is you do have to be a bit of your own advocate, because what Andre was saying is true. These organizations know that nobody is irreplaceable, and so you shouldn't treat yourself as irreplaceable. You should really be the one who looks after yourself and makes sure that there is life outside of work, and that will look like different things to different people. I don't want to give like a blanket statement of what's going to work, but what Svetlana was saying about knowing yourself is going to help, but then also knowing yourself comes with trying. So I didn't know if I'd like living in Djibouti. I ended up not liking it. And then I didn't know if I'd like living in Ethiopia. I ended up liking it. So you also do have to be just ready to up and do it and try it. That's my hot take.
That goes back to this commentary here that we have going on. Is sure, just give it a shot. Thanks for sharing some of those. And it's not always easy to share that side of it, especially when you're trying to, on the one hand, you do want to encourage people to try it and do it and go for it, while also having this warning to be like, yeah, you do sacrifice and give things. And before we move on to another question, I'm gonna actually something that Kenny has mentioned to me before. Get a little bit gauge to see how are people in the room feeling. Are we actually addressing some of these questions on barriers and challenges you've had? Or if you're more experienced, what were some of the barriers or challenges that you faced? So I'm going to give everybody 1 minute to think and then write down one word or a hyphenated word. Or if you speak another language, you can use a different language word, then explain that word if it doesn't fit. That kind of tries to encompass some of the barriers or challenges that you are currently facing in your attempts to enter or progress in the humanitarian field. So, and I'll give you 1 minute. You want to say something as well?
No, I think so. Practically speaking, you heard these presentations about getting started on all these challenges. Think for yourself. What do you think at the moment is, if you, after hearing this or reflecting on your own, what do you consider for yourself to be the biggest barrier at the moment? So you just want to see if we know if there's anything. We'll just do a quick round listing the words, and I'll try to keep track of it.
So I'll give you a minute now. Go. And we'll just quietly think about it.
My question is, how many people have used ChatGPT to summarize their thoughts down into one word?
No, they can't. So I'll have to chat it.
Those online, you feel free to put your word into the chat as we go around the room. But you've had a chance to think about your one word, and Aisha just joined us, so you'll have 15 seconds to think as we go around the room. Where everyone's going to share their one word that sort of encompasses the barriers or challenges they're facing entering the humanitarian field. We can start out on the far left, and then once the person next to your left is gone, you or to the right, I guess you're right. Then we can share and go around the room.
I actually also don't know the translation in English,
Okay.
so I would have to look that up. I would have said I would have translated it to punctuality, but it's not what it means.
What can you share? What's the word?
So basically,
In the original.
describing,
What word is it? In what language?
I would say for me it's German, and it's Punktualität, which is not to be on time, but it means basically to be the right fit at the right moment,
Okay,
or
nice.
that it is the right fit at the right moment.
Sure.
And
You
I'm
can call it
first
a
one-
hyphenated word.
I
Yeah.
first wanted to say context, but I think there's so many contexts, but then you reach out to them and they even like you, but then it just does not happen. Or like they say, I have another contact. I think maybe they have a position.
So
Sure.
the right time, the right place. you need to-
Good fit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next. Right here. Yeah.
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My word is myself.
Myself.
Yeah.
All right.
The unknown.
What is it?
Unknown.
Unknown.
Lack of specialization.
Lack of specialization. One word. Great.
Experience.
Imposter.
Imposter.
Sure.
That's a good one. All right.
I was gonna say skills.
Skills.
Family.
Family.
Emily.
Okay.
Nationality.
Nationality.
A bit of a hyphenated one, but juggling experiences.
Juggling experiences. That's hyphenated.
Yeah, I had the experience. Sorry,
Oh, go
I
ahead.
think someone said it already. So
Experience. No, we should want to hear repeats. That's valuable. You said experience. Okay.
I think family as the first one. Say,
Good fit.
yes.
Okay.
Uncertainty.
Uncertainty.
Loneliness.
Loneliness. Nice.
Money.
Money. All right.
Market, but languages.
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 Languages. All right. And we have, I see 5 comments online so far.
If you do them, I will.
We have Lisa Meyer has shared focus. Alina Onika has shared mentality. Taru has taken, I believe, a Finnish word, episelvus, obscurity. Too many options, don't know where to start. We have another experience. We have an overwhelmed with choosing a specialization. Sacrifices from Louisa Rook. We have, be keeping up for sure.
Yeah, no. fine.
Stability from Gabby Martinez San Juan. We have uncertainty from Nadine Suleiman, and guidance from Laura Fleca. Wow. You want to give us a little overview of what we saw
Yeah, so
there?
I've tried to group it, and it's not by any means a proper IM analysis, but so I think there's a group of that has it like it's jumping into the unknown, your uncertainty, stability, or the lack of thereof. There's a group on specialization, knowing your skills, your focus, and I think those fit into like that good fit, right? So where do I fit in? That might link to this unknown uncertainty. There's definitely a family stability, do you feel comfortable jumping into the deep end related to that? Language and nationality, I know they're different, but for the sake of, and then experience, overwhelmed. And personally, I'm also curious about the guidance, because this is something that for us as the network, we want to explore, like how can we help you remove some of those barriers, at least put you on the path of removing them, or helping you arrive at the conclusion that maybe, it's not for you or not at that moment. That's also a valuable part of the discovery, I think. Yeah.
How about our panelists with various amounts of experience? Do these echo with you? Are you experiencing issues with loneliness or your own experience or this imposter syndrome? That's also one. Does that exist at all levels? Whoever would like to speak, do these resonate with you? Having already entered the field, and I see you're excited to say something.
Imposter syndrome will probably always be some form of like a little chip on, like a little friend on my shoulder. And that's to say that I hope maybe, yeah, a path is made by walking. Another great quote by yours truly. Imposter syndrome to me looks like me asking if I'm good enough to be in the room. And this speaks to a lot of the questions about am I a good fit and where do I fit into this? And I think having worked here for the amount of time that I have, I've thankfully gained a bit of confidence in knowing that there is no room in the field. There is no room behind which is a person who is perfect, who has all the answers, who knows how to do everything. You work with imperfect people and you are an imperfect person, but no man is an island. So you have something to contribute. And in the beginning, for me, it looked different. Like what I had to contribute when I first started in my internships and when I first started in working in Djibouti, for example, what I had to offer and what my input was looked a lot different to what my input can be now. So just because you don't know now and you don't think that you're the perfect fit now, nobody's a perfect fit. You can still be good enough of a fit, and you need to just make your path by walking. I don't know if I can speak for everybody, but I honestly have no idea what I'm doing half the time in terms of my career, in terms of like, where am I going after this? And I do believe that that is pretty relatable to a lot of people. So just because you don't know where you're going to fit doesn't mean that you don't fit. It just means that you have to try things out a little bit. And that's, I think, the hot take that I have for
Yeah.
this.
Great. Yeah, I mean, you don't know what you're doing. Neither do I. You know, I'm here leading a panel. And Svetlana, you've been there 10 years. I'm sure you know exactly what you're doing at all moments, right?
Yeah, of course. Not. No, I share what Anna was saying. That yeah, imposter syndrome is there. I also have it. What helped me over the years, yeah, not in the beginning, definitely, but lately, is when I apply for, because my daily job is in Brussels, yeah, and I have to apply to be selected for deployments. And a few times I thought, okay, but there's, I know we have colleagues who are much more qualified than me, better fits, that would do a brilliant job. Why would they select me? And then anyhow, I put my name in and they selected me. One of the cases was for Paris when the pandemic started. We had to organize evacuations for the European citizens in China. And France was the first one organizing repatriation flights. And the job was, the mission was to go in the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs and represent the European Commission in there. And I thought, oh, wow, but we have so many French people, they must be thrilled to go. They know a lot better than myself. And then they didn't want to go. They didn't want to go. And I was on duty on that day, and I thought, but wait a minute. I mean, we have to do this. This is the job. We need to send somebody tomorrow. And if the French want to go, I will go. And I will do this job. Then I did it as best as I could. I think I did a good job. And then I realized, okay, yeah, maybe they were well placed. But what Anna was saying earlier, they were not up for the task at that particular moment. I was. Yeah. So it's also being willing to go and do. So yeah, maybe I'm compensating like that my imposter syndrome, but it works. Thanks.
Compensating the imposter syndrome by just going and doing it. I like that. So Andre, please tell us, is there a light at the tunnel? Do you know exactly what's happening at all times now that you've been there for quite a few more years than the rest of us?
I'm not sure I have such words of wisdom. But yeah, I think I would agree. You know, a lot of times it is just about showing up. I think this is what, I think maybe that was Anna's quote, I'm not sure, but Svetlana was just talking about it now, right? It's like, it's showing up in those cases and being available. No, I think the imposter syndrome is always going to be real and should always be real, in the sense that, we are very privileged if we're working in the international humanitarian space or the development space in a world that is 7-8 billion or whatever we are now. There's a lot of amazing people out there that maybe aren't choosing to work in this space, but we are lucky to have this work and should be putting in what we can. I think the things that actually resonate a bit with me, the sort of unknown uncertainties not even the stability, but this unknown and uncertainty. There's two things I think of, and that's one is I regularly have managers. We have these annual performance kind of documents, and they always sort of ask me, where do you want to be in 5 years, or where do you want to be in 10 years? And I'm like, I don't know where I want to be in 6 months. Like I know what I'm enjoying my work, and I know what I want to achieve in the next 6 to 12 months, but what I want to do in 5 years might still be very, very different. So there's always this sense of unknown or uncertain feeling. And the other one I think of is, it ties to the family point there of, sort of when I first went abroad, not when I first went abroad, but when I continued to stay abroad and continued going, it really made my family feel very uncomfortable, very uncertain about what I was doing, even to the point where they were making comments that I was, quote unquote, getting behind in life. So there's a lot of that can come from a lot of different directions, and it can feel very uneasy in the early days of a career, especially. And that's why I talked before a lot about the importance of support. So, but yeah, where it's going, I think, maybe if it's my last bit of wisdom, I would say, and this is because I saw someone who was quite disgruntled. If you're getting into this sector and you think you're going to change the world or save the world, don't come. And it's not for my sake. It's not for the people that you would help their sake. It's for your own sake. And the reason is, and I still remember this about 10, 15 years ago, I met a gentleman who was retiring from the humanitarian sector, been there for, had went through school for it, been in there 35 years. And he was so disgruntled because he didn't say this, but he hadn't changed the world. The world hadn't been saved. And so his point was like, what are we doing? We shouldn't be doing this. We should just be giving checks to governments, right? Like it was a very like he felt like everything had been wasted. So I think you have to reflect and realize that, in the humanitarian sector, it's about alleviating suffering. It isn't necessarily going to make the world a better place. That, in my opinion, is a lot more around development, or should be around development. And yes, there's a lot of overlap and so forth. But getting into this space, you have to realize that while you can do good, you may not be the person who saves the entire world. And I think you have to come in, find those problems that you can solve, and try to address them. And not even by yourself, but build that network, that ecosystem, and try to bring that to that problem. And that, then hopefully, like me, I look back at 20 years in this sector, and I think I've achieved several things, and hopefully can achieve many more. But, if I just spent my whole career initially thinking that I was going to get into this sector and just amazingly change it and do everything, I probably would be quite disgruntled. So I think coming in with the right expectations is definitely an important factor.
Well, it's
not to be a downer and tell you not to try, but I mean, it's like
it's unfortunate to hear that when you never find all the answers, the solutions to everything. But in a way, it's also refreshing to know. I remember I encountered this for the first time, and I'm glad to hear it here when I was looking for a job after my bachelor's, and I asked my dad for help. I'm like, oh, he knows everything. He's an adult. And I asked him, he was like, what do you know about like looking for jobs, figuring out opportunities? And he's like, actually, I'm doing the same thing. I'm looking for advice on my resume because it's changed in 20 years. And I realized, no, it's something that happens throughout. So all of these questions on like uncertainty, especially in the imposter syndrome, and these questions of knowing what kind of experiences you have, it seems like we have people from all backgrounds that it's something we have to learn to work with in our own way. As we pull into our final moments here of the presentation, I'll warn our speakers, and I'm going to ask you each to give a final little wrap-up commentary. But I wanted to thank everyone for joining. If you have any other questions for our speakers, I'll be sharing their contact information. And if you have questions for them, we'll have a way of getting it to them. If you have questions in general about getting involved as a Next Humanitarian, this session is being hosted as part of the Next Humanitarians Network. If you've seen us, we have a booth downstairs, and we're working to really empower the next generation of humanitarians to find their place in this humanitarian world. If you're having questions about what skills do I even have, like what experiences do I have, these are questions that you're not the only one asking that question. If those skills are sitting nicely in meetings and taking good notes, or if the skills are editing Excel spreadsheets, or if those skills are being able to deal with bureaucracy, we'll figure it out what it is and how that actually fits into the humanitarian sector. or outside of the humanitarian sector in a humanitarian lens. So in our final moments, Anna, do you have any final thoughts for our participants in the room and online?
Sure. My final thoughts are that translating your experience into resumeism and translating your knowledge and your experiences in whatever way you have it in resume language is a skill of its own. I feel like when you're applying for positions, which is I've got it ahead of me again pretty soon, and in 6 months this stint that I'm on will be over, and there is probably not going to be an extension for me because funding is what it is. But I mean, we'll never know, but I probably will be doing essentially again the same thing, just now with a bit more exposure and a bit more experience. You can make yourself sound really shiny and glorious, or you can make yourself sound really average and even below average, subpar. And even if you feel like you're subpar, you can still make yourself sound really shiny and glorious. And I think we all know that in like your resume is that's not who you are as a person, that's how you are as a product that you're presenting to whatever opportunity. Sometimes you have to grind a little bit to find that opportunity, but that doesn't mean that there isn't one out for you, because there was one for me, and I honestly am not that shiny and special. I'm just like every other person trying to make it out here. It does help though if you have the resilience to be exposed to new and challenging circumstances. So working or abroad, or finding an opportunity for volunteering, or going on high school exchange or university exchange, and all of that is going to contribute towards it. I hope that I am not super unrelatable and that I don't sound like I know what I'm doing too much. I do know what I'm doing, but only because I've been doing it for a minute. And the same goes out for everybody else. Nobody starts out knowing exactly what they're doing. So give it a go.
Thanks, Anna. Svetlana, any final commentary here?
Yes, thanks a lot. Well, yes, I also wanted to mention something on the application process for jobs. Just as an example, I've been now in the Emergency Response Coordination Center for 7 years, and I have attended 5 interviews just to keep my position. And with that, I want to tell you that it's not personal, yeah? When you apply to positions and you're not selected, it's not personal. When I had to apply, I had to go through the whole selection process just to keep my job. It's not personal. It's the institution that works that way, because I thought, okay, I'm doing well. I receive good reviews. There must be something that my bosses know about me that will make them keep me. No, the process is like that. Bureaucracy says you have to go through a recruitment process. Then you go through the recruitment process. And it's not personal. You have to present yourself again to your own bosses who you've been working with for years. And that's just it. You accept it. You can't fight it. So first of all, it's not personal if you're not selected, and if you have to go through weird recruitment processes. Secondly, it is a daunting experience. Yeah, before I got this job, I applied to 105 positions. I counted because I had a lot of unemployed time where I had to apply, send applications, and not even receive a rejection email. Yeah. And it's very unpleasant. You feel that you're not a fit, you're not good enough, you'll never find a job again. That's the way it is. We also go through that. I will go through that very soon because my contract expires and there's nothing I can do about it. Yeah. Again, it's not personal. So it's the same for everyone. And the last thing is just keep applying. Yeah. Keep doing it, because there's no other way, unless you're very skilled at networking and you manage to make friends very quickly and to position yourself for jobs. I don't have the skill. It's not my strong side. So I just go the traditional way, sending applications and trying to review my CV. And this is something that I'm currently doing as well. And it's just, it doesn't matter if you're in the beginning of your career or like me, 10 years down the line. I'm just not sure if I'm still not sure if my CV is good enough. I'm trying to ask friends or colleagues to review it. It's okay. Everybody goes through that. So yeah, keep applying and don't take it personally. Thanks.
Don't take things personally. That's one of my favorite books too, from the Four Agreements. But thank you for sharing that, Svetlana. And Andre, final comments from our panelists here.
Yeah, I would very much agree with that. That keep applying, be prepared to even as Svetlana noted, interview for your own job multiple times. That's also happened to me through my career. The couple of things that I would talk about, and I mentioned most of this already, but as you're finding your way into the sector, try to find a problem or a gap and fill it. Solve that problem, or whether it's, as Anna talked about, being able to expand into the humanitarian space somehow in a role. Is if there's a gap there, try to find a way to work and to solve it. And that talks about, I think, very much being adaptive and flexible in your work. And the last thing I'll mention is, even if you do try to get into the sector, I see somebody's made a comment about having a plan B that's not the humanitarian sector. I have, over the last 14 years, I've had about 75 or 76 interns. And it's been amazing to watch where these people have gone to. Now, some sure have ended up in sort of the humanitarian sector with the UN or international NGOs. Many have not. They've ended up in national NGOs. Some of them ended up in donors or governments or state or provincial level type disaster response entities. But they've also ended up, I've had a couple start private companies, right? I had one start an AI company many years ago. I had one start a modern finance company a few years later. I've got one now who's in PricewaterhouseCoopers, and because of his UN related experience, he's working on the international team and has become a partner, is the focal point in the partnership with the UN. I have several in Deloitte and Touche, and so they bring the humanitarian experience into those private companies as well. And I think that is very beneficial. I mean, I've had one who came as a GIS officer, so a map making kind of officer, and ended up in Las Vegas working on urban planning and sustainability, so bringing that humanitarian aspect, like how does Las Vegas exist in a desert, right? And trying to sort of help them think through some of those kind of things. So I would say that even if you do come into the humanitarian sector, even if it's a short bit, that hopefully you can take what you learn and the mentality from that to another place, even if it's outside this sector, and that hopefully, that at some point in the future, you'll be able to look back and think that maybe you enjoyed the ride.
Well, thank you all for those closing comments online. Really, really, really appreciate you taking time out of your busy days, your travel days. I know some of you are on the move currently, so I really appreciate you being able to join us today. And I appreciate all of you for joining here. You may be asking the question, how do you get started in the humanitarian field? Well, we have a Kenny Classic that you've been using in a lot of these sessions.
Yeah. So you saw one of the slides said the people who show up. Well, you showed up to this session. So this is hopefully the first step you take. And from my personal experience, I'll put it in a link, but I'll share it with all of you here in the room. There's a great song from Bas Luhrmann. It's called "Always Everybody's Free to Wear Sunscreen," and it's full of life advice. But in the end, it says it's just advice. You just have to figure it out. And I love the quote in there that says, some of the interesting people didn't know what they wanted to do when they were 22. Some of the most interesting 40-year-olds still don't. So it is okay to be uncertain. And actually, it can be threatening, but can also be exciting, I think. And, use this opportunity and let us know, like Jette said, how we can help you and take away some of those barriers.
We have some other opportunities for Next Humanitarians to be involved here at HNPW. If you still don't know exactly where you want to find yourself the next few days, we have on the screen, Kenny is sharing just now, that on Thursday, we have a Next Humanitarians closing section, next steps. You'll have a chance to give feedback. What is it that we can help with? What can the next generation do in this humanitarian sector? And that will be our final formal session that we're doing as the Next Humanitarians. We also have virtual buddies. For those who are online, feel free to join the virtual buddies. Part of a conference is always running into people randomly in the coffee break, and you can't do that if you join online. So virtual buddies is a way for people who are joining virtually to be able to meet random people that Kenny or I or anyone else brings into this call. So you can also have a chance to network a little bit casually in between sessions. And then, of course, come by our booth. We're also planning on having some drinks with the Next Humanitarians on Wednesday after the welcome reception here at CICG. We'll be going somewhere into the city center. So thank you so much for joining us, and I hope to see you around.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, Aisha has a comment there.